Hi everyone, it's Kelly from The Hub, here today with a new guest and a new series. This is Dr. Scott Silverstein from WellSpan Ephrata Community Hospital, and he is an expert on all things vaping. So we're going to talk about that topic. It's controversial for a lot of you, I know out there. You're thinking to yourself, and you've got questions too. So let's say hi to our new guest. Hello there, Dr. Scott. How are you?
Good, Kelly. Thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. So let's just get right into it. My first question for you is, let's just go to the brass tacks. What is vaping? Why is it what, and how did it sort of become a thing?
Vaping is when you have a device that has a heating coil, and that heating coil heats up a liquid. The liquid often has things in it, particularly nicotine, but it also can have THC, which is the psychoactive ingredient in marijuana. It can have CBD oil, but basically it's typically nicotine in an oil type base that is heated up and is released in an aerosol that people breathe then into their lungs. Although it's called vaping, it's really not a vapor. It's actually more of an aerosol that goes into your lungs and then it gets absorbed into your bloodstream.
So
originally the concept of vaping was really set up to help long-term smokers try to substitute nicotine in a different way to try to help them get off of cigarettes.
And so that's what I was going to ask you. So its initial purpose was to do that. So I guess, does it work in that way? Like, does it really help people quit smoking? Like, traditional quit smoking kinds of stuff?
That's a great question. And, a lot of times as pulmonary docs, we do whatever we can do to try to get someone off cigarettes.
Yeah.
I don't use the word tobacco because honestly, vaping is a tobacco product. Cigarettes are a tobacco product. And the reason for that is a tobacco product is considered anything that uses nicotine. So that's why vaping and cigarettes are both called tobacco products. So that's why I separate them out. In long-term smokers, your wizened 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old who's been smoking forever, the average smoker smokes about a pack of cigarettes a day on the average, okay? That is about 25 to 35 milligrams of nicotine. A lot of the older vaping devices would basically have milligrams of nicotine that they would use. So it's the same thing when you use a nicotine patch or nicotine gum. You're trying to substitute nicotine for nicotine. And before I talk about vaping, what I'll say is if a person smokes a pack of cigarettes a day, that is equivalent to 3 21 milligram patches, which are nicotine patches. So basically, for a person to stop smoking using nicotine patches, they need at least 2 or 3 of the strongest nicotine patches out there. So trying to find equivalent doses when you vape is actually very challenging because until the newer vaping devices came out a couple years ago, there was no way to tell how much nicotine was in these vaping devices. So to answer your original question, yes, the idea, and absolutely it did work, trying to get people to substitute a vaping device, which looks like a cigarette, often acted like a cigarette. And again, people often need the hand-to-mouth thing with the nicotine because, again, let's face it, the entire problem getting off cigarettes is nicotine addiction. It is an addiction at the heart of this. And ultimately, with vaping, what has happened is nicotine addiction has become the entire problem. So for the older wizened smoker that you wanted to try to get off cigarettes, it was felt that vaping was a safer and better alternative than actually using cigarettes, which have over 7,000 different toxic chemicals. And again, the cancer-causing risks, the coronary artery, stroke, etc. The problem, and this is the major problem, cigarette companies and vaping companies figured out that there is a gigantic new market that they want to hit. And they have gone after our middle school and teenagers. And basically what has happened is they have marketed them in a genius, horrible way to get our youth smoke and vaping. And by vaping, what's happening is because there are higher and higher amounts of nicotine in the newer vaping devices that are actually equivalent to a pack or more of cigarettes in each vaping device, what they're getting a middle-aged and high school group of children addicted at a much younger age. The other issue, Kelly, that's a problem, and a lot of people don't realize, is that when we talk about getting older people off tobacco and off cigarettes, the problem is that older people and younger people end up doing dual therapy. So what happens is they start vaping, it's not enough nicotine, so they actually do smoking cigarettes and vaping, which increases the amount of nicotine significantly, and it becomes a huge deal trying to get them to stop.
Right, because then they're just compounding it while they think they're doing it better. It's actually significantly worse.
Correct. And there's a huge difference between the older population trying desperately to be smoke-free versus the younger population who is becoming more and more addicted. Unfortunately, when when a middle schooler or a high schooler starts to vape, unfortunately, there is a 7 times higher likelihood that they will then go over to cigarettes.
So there's a lot to unpack there. I think I want to talk about kids first. So a good friend of mine started vaping because he smoked. He smoked cigarettes. And was, like you talked about, a person who smoked for a long time. So he tried the tobacco flavor. Well, he tried lots of different kinds. There's lots of different kinds out there in the market. He tried I will just say the most well-known brand, and tried the tobacco flavor and found it to be horrible. And so that company also makes lots of fruit flavors and those kinds of things. And he found the fruit flavored ones to taste good. Not that the tobacco flavored ones didn't taste like tobacco for him. So it was part of the aesthetic of smoking. So he found that the fruit flavored ones tasted good, and so used that for a while. So I guess, I know I said I wanted to talk about kids, and I ended up talking about this like other adult, but I guess I wanted to talk really about this whole fruit flavored concept. So the fruit flavored ones were the ones that were banned, and I'm not sure if that's the real word or not. They were not allowed to be manufactured anymore. How does that sort of work? You can't buy fruit flavored ones because those were the ones that were being targeted toward young kids.
This is so convoluted. If you ever want to be drink, go online and start to look up the banning and the effects of some of the policies on what happened. You are 100% correct. The major reason that they were able to hook middle school and high school kids primarily was due to flavors. There were over 8,000 different flavors on the market, and the fruit flavors, particularly mango. I mean, look, in Lancaster County, there's a chicken and waffles flavor. I mean, there are every kind of flavor you can imagine, everything. And certainly the most popular by far, as of the end of last year, vaping device was Juul.
Right.
Juul was so popular, it actually became a verb, juuling.
Yep.
And it's about 2/3 of the market. Juul had 9 different flavors.
Yep.
Certainly the most popular were mint and mango.
Yep.
But on the other hand, what happened is that in time, they realized that over 70 to 80% of kids said that the major reason they were vaping was because they liked the flavors. Shockingly, they did a study with Juul about Truth Initiative, which is a very interesting website, did a study, and they found that 67% of Juul users under the age of 18 did not know nicotine was in their Juuls. And each pod of Juul was equivalent to 1 pack of cigarettes. And the kids had no idea there was nicotine in it. So what the marketing groups did was they marketed to kids based on all kinds of different, again, the marketing devices were based on coolness, wanting to be part of a crowd, wanting to be in the in crowd. They did these things called cool vaping tricks that they basically got these kids to blow out smoke that looked like all kinds of bizarre, interesting little animals and different creatures. And so there was an online excitement using this. Kids, again, are going through tremendous anxiety issues, depression issues. 1 out of 4 kids have mental health issues. So the concept of using a drug such as nicotine is often used. They use it to calm them down. Certainly the major reason that most kids are using this is because of a peer that gets them started with it. But the main reason that they say they are using vapes are because of the flavoring. So you are 100% correct that as of February, the government said, federal government, said that the only vaping flavors that you can use in a pod or a cartridge, which is the most common forms of vaping devices, are 2. One is tobacco flavor and the other is menthol, okay? Oh. The other flavors had to go away, but in their infinite wisdom of what government does, they left a loophole. And the loophole was disposable vapes, of which there are a ton of them, could do still fruity flavors and whatever they wanted, as long as they were disposable.
Oh, so like the whole device would have to be thrown out, not just, and so you couldn't buy cartridges that are fruit flavored. The whole device would have to be thrown out.
Nope, they have to, no. The devices that are used now that they used could only be used, again, for pods and cartridges.
Okay.
Use tobacco and menthol flavored.
Okay.
If you want to get a fruit flavor, which they do, you have to go on and buy one of the disposable types of vapes. These are used once and pretty much throw out. And again, there are a lot of those out there. Enjoy is one of the more popular ones. There are a lot of these disposables, and you can still get the fruity flavors of all them. What becomes even more and more bizarre, the most common disposable that took over the market as of February was called Puff Bar. I don't know if you heard of them at all.
I haven't.
Puff bars are extremely popular, but to make matters even worse, the government then set up a bizarre thing with these disposable ones. And what they said was, if you were disposable, you could only use flavored disposables, but only if you were in business before 2016. If you were in business after 2016, you were not allowed, you were off the market. So Puff bars that were the most popular brand after the pandemic, they had to leave and go to Europe because they couldn't be sold in the United States because of this 2016 business, because they weren't in business before then. So the bottom line is kids can still go out and get flavored. They just have to be disposable. If they want the cartridge and the pod, which are the most common vapes out there, the only 2 flavors are the kind we talked about.
So I'm of the age that my parents smoked when they were young, and then they all had sort of made a collective decision that they weren't going to smoke. I didn't smoke, which is neither good or bad. I just didn't. And so I never grew up with that pressure because I didn't have parents that smoked. When I was in high school, when lots of times you learn those things, I didn't have friends that smoked. So how did we make that huge reversal? Because like, even if you watch like a real old show or a show that's about that, like the 50s or the 60s, when people would smoke in their office and newscasters would smoke on TV, how have we made that almost full circle that smoking is cool? Because I sort of thought that big tobacco made a pledge. They weren't going to do that anymore. Oh, this isn't big tobacco, right?
Well, first of all,
that was a really loaded question.
Yeah. First of all, Joel, let's talk about it a different way.
Okay.
The year 2025, the vaping market will be worldwide worth $60 billion. Okay. So first of all, when they say it's not about the money, it's always about the money.
Right.
Just so you're aware, at the end of 2018, Joel the primary part of Juul, which again was 2/3 of the market, was bought by Altria. Okay, they made a $35 billion stake in Juul. Views, okay, the second largest,
Right.
bought by Mars. And the bottom line is, behind every major vaping company is big tobacco. So they learned very quickly that where cigarettes are not being, again, in our country, the amount of people that are smoking as adults has come from around 25 to 30% in the 60s. Now it's down to at a high 13% of adults smoke cigarettes.
Okay.
Problem is that because they realized that, again, in Asia and other markets, that number is much higher.
Yeah.
But in the United States, they needed a new market. So what they saw the new market in was absolutely not adults. It was in kids. And so what they are marketing to hugely online, social media, where a lot of adults don't even take the time to look or don't have any idea what our kids or grandkids are doing.
Yeah.
Marketing them every day, every minute to get these, to do vapes. Once they hook them on nicotine, they have them. And the difficult part of your question is, how do we get those kids who are nicotine addicted below the age of 18? How do we get them off of vaping or get them off vaping and smoking? That is the most massive problem that we have right now.
Yeah.
They are marketing so much to get these kids started. And it was initially with the flavors, but now every step of the way, they get around them. And I can promise you, every time a state tries to block them, and several states have, the most recent is Michigan, trying to block all flavors and try to block all vapes, I promise you the tobacco lobby, the vaping lobby shuts it down, because our politicians only respond to money in the pocket, not what's ethically correct. The answer to your question, literally, what the tobacco companies did through the 60s, they were forced to do public health messaging and pay for it. So as long as there was good public health messaging, lung cancer, the Marlboro Cowboy, those numbers have gone down. Vaping became an epidemic that got so fast, so far, they didn't realize until it was way too late that this was an epidemic in kids. They just did not realize who they were marketing to. So the bottom line is, right now, they're doing their best to do public health messaging. People like myself going to schools, online, where finally we're trying to tell kids, look, this is not good. One of the most important things that happen to affect kids vaping is something called EVALI. Have you heard about that?
I haven't.
Maybe you have, it's just not that name. EVALI stands for e-cigarette or vapor product use acute lung injury. And this was a lung injury. Yeah, I'm sure you would have heard of it. For about a period of a year, there were over 2,000 people who developed acute lung injury due to vaping what they felt was vitamin E oil that was mixed into bootlegged or street-bought vapes, mostly vaping THC or marijuana. And they mixed it with vitamin E oil to make it last longer and have a bigger puff of smoke. But these people started developing severe lung damage. And so the word got out there pretty quick that this came from vaping. So it really helped to cut down on the numbers. The only good piece of news I can give you as far as vaping at all, the statistics for 2020 just came out, and they showed that compared to 2019, last year, 27% of high school students vaped within the past 30 days, and this year it's down to 20%. So it's dropped 7% over the past 30 days. And in middle school, it's dropped from 10% of middle school students down to 5%. So the number is still between 3.5 and 5 million vaping a day, but at least the numbers look like they're starting to drop.
I have to tell you, the more questions I ask you, the more questions I have, which is a very good thing. So how about this? Let's leave this where we are today. I'll come up with some more questions to ask you, and we can talk about lots of other things. I definitely want to talk about what it does to your body. Like what it does to your lungs, what other chemicals do, how it affects your brain, all that kind of stuff. So we've got a lot to talk about. Thank you times a million for starting this series with us, and this is going to be really helpful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Talk to you again, everybody.